Okay, so in this week's guitar lesson, we're going to be talking about improvising using the major and the minor pentatonic scale and how you can weave back and forth in between those two. What's nice about the pentatonics are they're really just one shape, more or less, and you just have to learn how to use that shape to play either major or minor pentatonic scale. So anyway, we're going to be talking about how to go back and forth between the two using 3 different regions of the fretboard. And so I've got this lesson split into 2 parts. In this video, we're going to go through the first half of everything. If you'd like to download the tablature, watch the second video, and also get the MP3 jam track so that you can practice everything we're about to talk through. You can get those extras by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP530. Okay, so this song is played in the key of G, and it's kind of a Grateful Dead style little jam rhythm thing, and it goes between a G and an F chord like this. And actually there's a C chord there as well, so I'll throw in a C every now and then. I'll throw in a C to get us back to the G. But the 2 main chords are G and an F. And that doesn't really matter so much because we're going to be staying in the key of the song. So there's kind of 2 approaches when you're improvising. You can either play the changes, which is where you're playing arpeggios and you're really outlining the notes of the chords as they go by. It sounds a little more sophisticated, a little more advanced. But then there's the good old staying in the pentatonics, which means we just stay in the key of the song. It doesn't matter that there's an F chord in here or a C chord. We're just going to be worrying about one thing, and that is G major and G minor pentatonic scale. That's it. So we're thinking G, and that's it. So the first thing we're going to look at is this first position. And we're going to be up here using I'm going to call this the E neighborhood. And I'm only saying that because these 3 fingers are making up the E shape. This is from the Cage system. So think of your E chord in first position. If you were to slide it up and capo with your finger on the 3rd fret, you'd be playing a G chord, but we're using that E shape. In this neighborhood, we have this note, which is a G note. And this is going to be the first note that we're going to pay attention to because everything's going to kind of hinge off this one note here. Now I realize there's a few other G notes in this neighborhood. We've got one here on the 5th fret 4th string, and we've also got one on the 3rd fret 6th string. But for simplicity's sake, we're really going to be focusing on this one. So the first thing I want to do in this neighborhood is I want to connect the major pentatonic scale to this chord shape so that you can start to connect these things in your mind. So we're going to be looking at major pentatonic scale pattern 2, and it looks like this. We're just going to play that piece of it. I realize it keeps going down through the rest of the strings, but this is the most important part of it. This is the filet mignon out of the major pentatonic scale in this position. For my opinion, anyway. This is where you can get most of your lead stuff, and this would be a great place to start with. I can't go through everything in every video, and I'm just trying to get the real essential stuff. So, major pentatonic scale, that would be pattern 2 of your major pentatonic scale, but connect that to your E chord shape, right? Okay, so now we've got those things connected. And then, in this same neighborhood, we've got our minor pentatonic scale, pattern 1. So it looks like this. And we'll just use that first little part of it. We'll come down to there. We'll just kind of skip the bottom 2 strings. Everything we're going to be doing is pretty much on the first 3 strings. There's going to be a few situations where we play on the 4th string, but most of it is on the first 3 strings. So, quick review. E chord shape, we've got our major pentatonic scale. We've got our minor pentatonic scale. Right? And they're both in this neighborhood. All right, the next point I want to highlight in this is which notes are good bendable notes. And so the first thing, we'll go back to the major pentatonic scale. This 5th fret 1st string, that's a great bendable note. You can do a full bend or a half bend. If you do a full bend, you're staying major. If you do a half bend, you're bending into the minor pentatonic scale. So you're bending into this note, right? So hopefully a light bulb went off for somebody out there. Oh yeah. Half bend gets me to this note, which is minor pentatonic scale. So that would be on that string. Also, on this 5th fret 2nd string, you can do a half bend. Now, you can't do a full bend. Well, it's not going to sound good to do a full bend there. So let's just call that a half bend for that note. And you're bending up to this note, which is in your minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, right? Right? So you're bending into this note. So hopefully you can understand that one simple little concept, but these half bends, just get you to notes that you're already familiar with that get you into that minor pentatonic sound. Okay, so that's major pentatonic scale notes to bend. Minor pentatonic scale notes that you can bend would be this 6th fret 1st string, the 6th fret 2nd string, and the 5th fret 3rd string. You can do full bends on each of those. So those are the main bendable notes. I realize we can bend some of these notes back here, but I'm just trying to get the essential stuff so that we can get going and start making some music. So what I've just given you is actually a very powerful formula. You've got major sounds, you've got minor pentatonic scale, you've got the major 3rd, you've got the flat 7, you've got all this stuff right at your fingertips, but you're thinking pentatonic scales, but all of that stuff is connected. Let me play a jam track and start to demonstrate how all this stuff works together. Okay, so we have the jam track playing, and it's going back and forth between the G and the F chord, but the note we're going to really focus on is this G note here. This is going to be what everything pivots off this note as we pivot between major and minor pentatonic scale. We're going to start off with major though, and I want you to look at this. A little box here between the 3rd fret and the 5th fret on the 2nd string and the 1st string. Now that's most of your major pentatonic scale that I showed you. It was only leaving out one note actually. We're leaving out that note for now, but let's just look at these notes. And let's land on this G note here. So this is what I'm talking about. Let me demonstrate. So I'm just playing the major pentatonic scale in this position, landing on or focusing on this G note here. Now, remember we had some bendable notes. Let's look at this note. There's one of them. Now notice there, that time I did more of a half bend to get into that minor pentatonic. Notice how it went kind of bluesy. As opposed to this, happy, because it's major, versus, right? Hopefully you can hear the difference. It's a subtle thing with your fingers that bend, but it makes all the difference in the world whether you're doing a full bend or a half bend. So, now down here I can do a half bend. Everything I'm doing there is between those 4 notes of the major pentatonic scale. With, some bends, obviously I'm bending into another one, but I'm just positionally, I'm in that major pentatonic scale. Now, let's look at the minor pentatonic scale, pattern 1. These 2 notes are the same on the 3rd fret, but we come up to the 6th fret, 1st string and 2nd string. We're still gonna just stay on the top 2 strings for now, but check this out. I can do my bend up here on that 6th fret 1st string. Then I can bend on the 6th fret 2nd string. Notice going back and forth now between between minor and major. But I keep coming back to that G note because this note is shared between both of them. Obviously this note is as well, but this note is a very safe note to land on because it's the note of the key of the song. So everything I'm doing there is just minor pentatonic, major pentatonic, weaving back and forth, just using this as a pivot, really, using that G note. Minor, major, that's it, it's that simple. Now we've got other notes obviously, but I wanted to start off and just demonstrate that and let you hear the difference and those subtle things like the half bend versus the full bend. Now I came down to the 3rd string, that's minor pentatonic, but there's that note from the major pentatonics, that's your 3rd interval of your chord. So you can see that you can go from minor to major right there in that one spot. And when I come down to this note, I'm coming down to the lower G, 5th fret 4th string. even if you get nothing else out of this lesson, take this one piece of information, put on the jam track and just experiment. Try and come up with some simple little phrases using those notes. You don't have a whole lot of variables to work with, but you can sing with that. All right, so now let's move on to the next region of the fretboard, our next neighborhood. So we were just down here in the E neighborhood. Now we're going to come up to the C shape. It's still going to be a G chord, but we're going to be playing in this area. But the note that you really want to pay attention to is the G note on your second string. So look at what we've done. We had a G note here on the first string. Now we've got a G note on the second string. That's going to be our main note, our note that we kind of pivot off of. And so if we're looking at this as being our neighborhood, we have our major pentatonic scale pattern 4. We're going to look at the top 3 strings of that. We're going to look at just that piece of it. And we have our minor pentatonic scale pattern 3 in this same neighborhood. It looks like this. Okay, let's do a quick review in this area, playing off of this G note here. Major pentatonic scale, minor pentatonic scale. Okay, so there's some shared notes between them, but notice the G note, that one's obviously in both of those, major and minor. And what this allows us to do we've got this little triangle here, and I've talked about this in other lessons. Actually, I'll put a link up to another lesson that I've done talking about the triangle shape. And why I call it that is it looks like a little point here. This 9th fret, 3rd string would be the point. And on this 8th fret and the 10th fret on the 2nd string, that would be like the base of the triangle. So the main note, your G note, is this note. That's the note you want to land on. But you've got this little triangle here, and you can bend this 10th fret 2nd string. You can do a full bend or a half bend. If you do a full bend, you're major. If you do a half bend, you're going into the minor pentatonic scale. So you're coming into this note, which is in your minor pentatonic. So you've got all of that major stuff, and you can quickly pivot into your minor stuff. But my index finger keeps coming back to that same G note. I don't really let go of that. Whether I'm playing major or minor, I kind of use that as like an anchor. So I have major, and then I've got minor. So as far as bendable notes, I mentioned in your major pentatonic scale, you have this 10th fret 2nd string, which you can do full bend or a half bend. In your minor pentatonic scale, you have this 11th fret 2nd string that you can do a full bend. That's your bendable note. There's other notes, but those are the main ones. And with that, you can do the B.B. King thing. You can go into the blues. And it's all right here in that neighborhood. Let me put on the jam track and I'll demonstrate it. Okay, same jam track's playing. So I'm going to come to this G note here, which is on the 8th fret 2nd string. That's going to be my home. I'm just going to keep coming back to that. Whether I'm playing major or minor pentatonic scale, I'm going to keep pulling myself back to that. So this first thing that I'm doing is I'm using those 3 notes of that triangle shape. These notes, right? So remember, you can bend this 10th fret 2nd string. But notice I keep coming back to that G note. I can come up to this first string. These are major pentatonic notes as well. All right, now let's pivot into the minor pentatonic scale. We're going to bend here on the 11th fret 2nd string. Hear how it totally changes the feel. I'm going into the blues, but I'm still coming back to that G note. And then I can go back and forth between those 2 scales. There's a little chromatic thing. that I did, kind of walking, you know, from this note to this note. You can do that too. You can hit those notes in between if you want. Just don't spend too much time on them. But anyway, that's the sound of this position. All right, so we've looked at the major and minor pentatonic scale in this position using the E shape, using this G note on the first string. And then we came to the C shape and let this note, which is our G note on the second string, be our anchor. Now we're going to come up here to the A shape. It's really between the A shape and the G shape because there's this triad, this little 3-note G chord that lives here on the 12th fret, and that's shared between these two shapes from the cage system. But our note is 12th fret 3rd string. There's our G note. So look at that. We have 1st string, 2nd string, and now 3rd string. They're all G notes. They're just played on different strings. So when we're up here, if we think of this as our A shape, for example, this is your G note. So our pentatonic scales, let's look at the minor pentatonic scale first, because it's going to be the exact same shape as what we did for the major pentatonic scale when we were down here. The triangle and all of that, it's exactly the same. So in this case, our G note is going to be on the 12th fret 3rd string, but then right above that, we have these notes. This will be your minor pentatonic scale, pattern 4 of the key of G. So just like we've done in the other two neighborhoods, this note, this 12th fret 3rd string, is going to be the note that we use to pivot to get from minor to major. So we've got our minor pentatonic scale. There's our little triangle, same triangle shape as before. The only difference is you're landing on this note as opposed to down here you're on the sort of the base of the triangle. Now we're at the tip of the triangle. And then our major pentatonic scale in this area would be here. Look at this. Now that shape should look familiar. That's good old pattern 1, right? The same as like your pattern 1 of your minor pentatonic scale. However, if you play it here, you're playing the G major pentatonic scale. And that's why we're repurposing these same shapes. They're just used over and over again. Another reason why the pentatonics are so popular. You can go from major to minor using the same shapes and the same bendable notes, and you know, all those things that we have in one position will work for the most part in the other. So you can go now into major. Notice I'm landing on that note, though, that 12th fret 3rd string. From that to minor. And it's all right there in this little region. And it makes it easy to go back and forth between them. Okay, so hopefully this is starting to make sense. Using that G note in these three positions as an anchor to get you between major and minor pentatonic scale. It's a shared note. It's this common ground that happens between the two pentatonics. And once you can see that, and you can see its relationship in one versus the other, it starts to unlock the whole thing. So just take that jam track and take these three regions and just practice playing the major thing, playing the minor thing, and look for common ground between them. So I'm going to wrap up this part 1 video there or here. If you'd like to join us in the part 2 video, I'm going to go over the song that I played in the intro. We're going to kind of go through that, and that song uses the three regions of the fretboard. You can go back to the beginning of this video and watch that if you want, and you can it'll start to make more sense now that you have this background information. You can see, oh yeah, he's in the E region or C region or whatever. I started down here and kind of worked my way up. But I played major and minor pentatonic scale licks in all three positions. Anyway, we're going to go over all of that information in the part 2 video for how to play that song and break that down. If you'd like to join us for that, please do, and you'd also have access to the extra materials as well in addition to that. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel as you're watching this, I would encourage you to do that. Click the alert bell, and that way you can stay notified as I put out new lessons, which I do all the time. All right, we'll see you in part 2.